Hello again, everyone. I've been having some camera trouble today, so hopefully I will be able to get through this video. I tried filming this a couple of times and my camera shut off. Usually it means that my phone needs an update, but we'll see if I can get through this one. If not, I might have to update and do it again. But anyway, so this is an update on my sort of everyday carry fountain pens. I will put a link down below to the video where I selected, at that point, the 9 pens that I was going to use to the exclusion of all others until, each one ran out of ink. It now turned into 10 pens, and frankly, I cannot remember. Maybe when I go through them, I'll remember which one it was that I added to the bunch. But this is an update on how that is all going. So I'm going to go through the pens and tell you what I liked and didn't like, and why they weren't working or why they were working. And we'll just go ahead and start. So this is the Pelikan M800, which I love, love, love. I am never going to get rid of this pen because it has a beautiful nib. It's a beautiful pen. It's piston fill. It holds a lot of ink. The only issue, and I did actually use this more than the other 4 or the other 3 that were left in here. The others I have transferred to other notebooks because I was using them so often, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. But I use this one more than these 3. But the broad nib was just a little too broad for everyday writing and the type of writing that I've been doing. And I apologize for the Band-Aid. I burned my fingers really badly doing art, melting wax. But anyway, it's almost healed, so I just want to still keep it covered. But I love this nib, but it's just a little too broad for everyday writing that I've been doing. I have been using it for things like putting quotes in my commonplace book, and I haven't been really keeping up my commonplace book too much, but when I do, nibs like this are perfect because I'm usually just writing a quote or a little saying or something in that book. So this is perfect for that. But it's in here because I was pulling it out as needed, wasn't using it all the time. So this one is the Opus 88 Picnic, and if you're interested in why I selected these as my everyday carries, my first batch of everyday carries, I would refer you down to the video that I have linked below, because that'll kind of talk about my, it'll explain why I chose each of these pens for this. I wanted a good variety, basically. But this has always been one of my favorite pens, especially when combined with this nib, which is I believe it's a SIG nib. Yeah, I think it's a broad SIG nib. Is that what it says here? The ink has wiped off so much on the little washi tape label that I had it on there, so I can't tell. But this pen dried out a lot, and I think part of the reason why is I didn't write with it as much as some of the other pens, and I started to notice this more as time went on. Earlier on, it was easier to get it going, and then the longer it sat between writing, it just got harder and harder to start. And I didn't always have water handy, because you can always kind of dip your nib in some water to get it going, but there was a little bit of ink crust that had developed here. I've actually even cleaned it off, and there's still some. And this is SBRE Brown ink by Ackerman. And I've never really had troubles with it, but I guess I just let this sit too long. One of the other issues is probably because this is a dropper fill, and you do need to release the valve at the end to lift a little plug that's up here so that ink can flow and air can flow. And usually I've been storing it with this completely closed. So that means there's a limited amount of ink between here and here, and I think it just dried out. Clearly the cap is not completely airtight. However, I do wonder if I had left it unscrewed a little bit on the back, if it would not have dried out as much. So basically this one and the M800 are not going anywhere, but just things to be aware of. I think this is a pen that is better used daily, or at least more frequently than I was using it as a writing instrument, because it does hold a lot of ink, so it's great for everyday writing, And I think that was part of the reason too why I didn't use this that much, is because I didn't want sort of bland brown ink. So that's also something for me to think about for my next batch of pens. I am thinking of rearranging some stuff and putting new pens in here, which is part of the reason why I wanted to film this video, to give you an update. But yeah, I just, because this also has brown ink in it, or sort of greenish brown ink. It has, it's one of the T inks by Linen Toolbar, but I prefer this ink over this ink, I think. And I think I just wanted it to be a little bit more special, just given the kind of writing that I've been doing lately. So, so that's what's up with these. But these two are still great pens. Still highly recommend them. These are just quirks that happened as I was using them here. Okay, now the two handmade pens that I had. So I'll tell you in a minute, there's nothing wrong with this pen. It's the ink that I had trouble with. So we'll get to that one last out of this 4, and then I'll show you the other pens that I have. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm going to permanently dedicate them to these other notebooks, but they've been in there for a long time and they've been working really well. So we'll see if I switch those around. But this is the Birmingham Ink pen, Birmingham Ink Company, or Birmingham Pen Company pen. This is the only one I have by them. The nib is a Nemosine 0.6, which is a great nib. You can actually, I hope you can still get these nibs directly from Birmingham Pen. Nemosine is no longer in business as far as I know, and I think that they're also not making nibs. I apologize for my Band-Aid. I've had this on for a while because I got a really bad burn on both of my fingers. You can see this one's healing much better than this one. This was like a 2nd-degree burn. I was melting wax for art and accidentally touched a hot part of the iron I was using. But so be careful with hot items, everybody, and don't do it too long and you get tired and you forget what you're doing. That's kind of what happened to me. But anyway, back to the Birmingham Pen Company pen. So this pen, I didn't use it. I was kind of, in a way, I was kind of saving it because I'm like, oh, I really love that 0.6 stub nib. You know, I'm going to save that for something special. That was a mistake. I should have used it right away. This has been in here, I don't know, you know, since I filmed that video, last video, whenever that was, a few months ago, and it completely dried out without me even ever using it, which was really kind of disappointing because when I got around, see, you can see it's all dried out in the converter. It might be a little bit down there, but I think that's all dried out. It was very disappointing because I wanted to use this finally and I got it out and it was completely dry and unusable. So I don't think that this model of pen is airtight in any way, shape, or form. And again, if I want to use this again, I'm just going to have to use it right away. So I'm not sure if I'm going to put this in rotation again. I kind of have to think about this one. I do like the pen itself. It's kind of nice that it's the only one that I have by Birmingham Pen Company. So we'll see. I'll decide about that at some point. I may even do a follow-up to this follow-up to let you know how things are going. All right, so this is by River City Pen Company. I had to remember. And this is the Water Lily Koi Blank that this is in. Still love, love, love this pen. I actually did use this one quite a bit because this does have my fine palladium nib on here. Is that palladium or platinum? Yes, it's the palladium, the fine palladium nib. So love the nib, love the pen. I love the ink in theory, but I believe it is Sailor's, I want to say Ume. I think that's which ink is in here. Oh, no, it's the platinum Yama Budo. It's Yama Budo, which was kind of surprising to me. I wonder if it's because the ink had been sitting in here for a little while before I started putting this in this configuration, then I added ink to it instead of cleaning it out. And I wonder if that was a problem because this ink didn't dry on paper. So I just think maybe it got too concentrated and gunky, and then I put more ink in it without cleaning it out, and that was a mistake. So pen great, nib great. I just stopped using it because of the ink not drying, and then it would smear and all that kind of stuff. So what I might do is put this back into the rotation and just clean it out and put a different ink in. But to a certain extent, I might want to start fresh with a new batch. So we'll see. But that's what ended up in here because they were not used as much for one reason or another. And this is in hand stitched leather tee, leather pen case. The link to this is in the first video that I linked down below. And so now I'm going to talk about the other pens that I have associated with notebooks. So these two pens that are in these things, and I'll show you the other one here in a minute, are the ones I by far use the most. And I mean, I guess the Esther Brook should be no surprise to me. This is associated with my YouTube journal, which I've switched from, I think I had it in a Austin leather from Chic Sparrow Weeks notebook, and now I put it in a, this was actually a Maverick from back in the day. It's one of the only, one of the few Weeks size Chic Sparrow notebooks that I have. So I put it in here, and this pen is, so the pen is really comfortable to write with. This is an Esther Brook Esty. The pen is really, really nice to hold. It actually works well, both capped and uncapped, but I generally am using it unposted. Capped, by capped I meant posted, sorry. So, you know, you can use it like that for real quick writing, or, you know, you can just leave the cap or the cap off the back, and it works great. And this nib, I think, is one of my all-time favorite nibs. This is the vintage Esther Brook, what number is it? 2668. And I've put this in one or two of my favorites videos in the past, but this nib is just so fantastic. It, and I think the ink I have in here is Sailor that I have in here. And that combination is just amazing. The nib is super smooth. It has a little bit of line variation, but not too much. It just is a pleasure to write with. It actually, so it's not flexy, but I feel like when I put the nib to the paper, it just glides. And I love that in a nib, and that is what this nib delivers. So it's not just the nib though. I thought, you know, initially maybe it's just the nib, but it's also the feel of this pen in my hand. The Esther Brook Esty is really, really comfortable for my hand. It's not super small, it's not super big, it's like just the right size. I do wish it posted a little bit better. I can use it posted if it's just like a quick writing thing, but for longer periods it gets really heavy in the back when it's posted. But this is fantastic. You know, I might pull out one of my other Esties to put in the next rotation with a different nib to see how I feel about that. But this is great. Fantastic. I highly recommend that combo. The vintage 2668 nib, you should be able to find it. I mean, it's not one of the more rare ones I've seen. It's actually one of the more common ones that I've seen. I cannot guarantee you that every vintage 2668 will write as well as mine. I don't know if this was ever tuned or whatever, because I bought it used, obviously. But this is definitely a nib that I recommend. It's amazing. And it has a fairly fine writing line. Let me see if I can find something in here. Let's see. Let's do one of the past ones that I've already, oh no, I only just put this in here not like a few weeks ago. So, okay. So here is a little bit of a spoiler. You're going to be seeing some Daniel Smith gouache on the channel. But this is the line quality. I wouldn't say it's completely fine, but it's a little bit less than medium, but it's a lovely nib, and it writes beautifully on the paper in the Weeks, in the Hobonichi Weeks. So that's going to stay with that for a little while, probably until I run out of ink in that one, which is probably coming up on running out of ink. And then probably the one I've used even more than that, and I think this is the one I added. I did not, or is it? I don't know. I don't think it is. I think I had this in my original set. This is a Pilot, what is the number? Is the Pilot Heritage 92 in a fine nib. And this has another Sailor Blue ink. I can't remember if this is the Sailor or the last one was Sailor. But this pen, I would have to say that based on my writing experience, if you're looking for a very fine nib that's going to be very smooth, this is your nib. The same nib comes in the Pilot 74 model. and I think a couple of other models from Pilot, but I can't remember. Those are the two that I'm sure that they come in, this one and the Pilot 74. But this has a piston fill, which is my preferred method of ink fill. And I personally, I think this is the perfect pen for me. And especially for doing everyday journaling and calendaring and that sort of thing, because the nib is fine and it writes really well in small spaces. Let me see if I can find an example of that in here before we, let's see, let me find one that doesn't have, doesn't have a bunch of, okay, here you go. So this is from early February, Groundhog Day, and so I have a little stuffed groundhog that was handmade by a maker who does not make those kinds of things anymore. It's like a patchwork stuffed groundhog. I put him out every day on Groundhog Day to see if he sees his shadow. And he did see his shadow this year. So there's 6 more weeks of winter. That's definitely been true in Colorado, but it seems like maybe on the East Coast, you know, maybe you guys have a different groundhog because that doesn't work. Groundhog Day, you know, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the channel, but it is actually my favorite holiday. I know it's not really a holiday. You don't get the day off, etc. But I think the tradition is just so hilarious, and groundhogs are so cute that I love it as a day, and I have celebrated it in one way or another pretty much my entire life, at least my adult life, not my kid life. But yes, Barry the groundhog comes out every year and tells me whether there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter. But anyway, this is the quality of line that you get from this pen. And like I said, it's super smooth. Because it is a fine nib, the ink dries pretty quickly. Although I do have a, you know, one of these guys, little, I'm totally blanking on what that's called right now, but it's to, you know, a blotter sheet to soak up the ink. But I don't have to use it as much as other pens. So this, it's either going to go back into rotation, or I'm certainly going to keep it in here. And I think I'm about halfway through. This has a pretty big capacity for ink, even though it doesn't seem like it. I'm about halfway through the ink in there, and I might just keep it in there until the ink runs out. Oh, and if you're wondering what Traveler's Notebook this is a vintage Chic Sparrow from one of the earlier days. I actually bought this used because I was not onto the Chic Sparrow game at that point, but it is called a Mina. And it has this little fold out here that has a zipper pocket and some upright pockets. So if you can find it, they came in B6 Slim, which is why I really like it. But this was in a violet color, I believe. And I also kind of wanted to give it some patina because it was pretty much pristine when I got it. And I'm trying to get away from keeping my Traveler's Notebooks pristine. So we'll see. We'll see. My only issue with this one is it does chunk up a little bit more because of that extra flap. So if I want to keep it more streamlined, I might switch to something else. Okay, and finally, I'd already unbuckled this so that I didn't have to deal with that, but this is a Superior Labor A5. I don't know if it's called a folio. I mean, it might even be like a writer's folio. I've forgotten the exact name. And I got this one used as well. So I got actually a pretty good deal on it. Normally they're pretty expensive, and I think I got it for around $100 used. So that is, that's definitely not how much they cost normally. But the leather is just so lovely, and it patinas over time. It's lovely. The Superior Labor, they have beautiful products. Let's see, I think that's actually a natural thing in the leather, not a scratch, or maybe it's a scratch because there's some up here too. But yeah, I don't know. But I'm trying not to be precious with this one either. You can see there's kind of a nice patina developing on the strap. But anyway, it's not to talk about this Superior Labor notebook, which has this little pen thing here. And this is, I think this paper that I have in here is from Galen Leather, back when they had the original Tomoe River paper. I kind of stocked up on those. So that's what's in here. And I am doing some writing in, so originally it was going to be sort of written out like a memoir start to finish, but I've moved to more kind of sort of an outline format and then kind of filled in things as I go. And then eventually I'll probably type it up. It's going to take me forever, guys, because anytime I start writing, I had a very traumatic childhood. Don't feel sorry for me. I am, I'm getting the help I need and things are great now. But I did want to eventually try to get my memoir published because I think it could help a lot of people, because basically at the end of the day, it's not you. You are not the problem. And to the extent you are the problem as an adult, you can fix yourself. So, but anyway, I'm not going to talk about that too much, but it will take me a while because every time I start getting into here, I start getting a little bit of PTSD. So it's been taking me a long time to kind of flesh it out, which is why I've been doing it in shorter spurts. But anyway, so that's what's in here. This is sort of a memoir notebook. And then I like to keep a variety of pens in here. So these I moved from this guy. Oh, okay. So it was this pen that I added. It was this TWSBI. And I think, and this one's almost empty, I originally was using this in my everyday carry, which was also great. It's a fine nib and it's very smooth because I smoothed it and tuned it and smoothed it myself. When I got it, it was actually very scratchy, but it turned into a beautiful nib after tuning and smoothing it. And I forget which ink is in here. It's a purple ink, which is pretty strong, although I don't remember which one it is. And this is a pretty special TWSBI. This is one that has the Rodden treatment on the cap. I believe it was originally from Bungu Box, but I did get this one used as well. Places like Mercari, the online marketplace, is where I've gotten a lot of things like this, or Facebook Marketplace or something like that. And you can actually get a lot of cool stuff for a good deal when people are, trying to destash their stationery stuff. But I mean, this wasn't super cheap, but it was definitely cheaper than the original price. But I do love this TWSBI Eco. I will probably never part with this because I do love it quite a bit. I think the person probably didn't like the nib that was on here, but you can always swap the nib out on these. It's a little bit more difficult on the Eco than some of the higher end TWSBIs, but I decided to go ahead and try and tune and smooth the nib first, which worked wonderfully, and now it's one of my favorites. So this was also a great pen for using in my everyday carry. I think I got this out of my pouch of other pens, one of my pouches of other pens, because I was originally using something that was a little bit fatter of a nib in my everyday carry, and I need something fine. And for whatever reason, I didn't want to use the Pilot. I think that this went with a notebook that I was using a little bit better than that one did. So that's why I pulled this one out. But I did use it quite a bit, and it's pretty much, it's probably time to clean this one out. I can probably get some more writing out of this one, but not much. But I put it in here so that I could use it in here as well, and that's probably also why the ink is running out, because I've used it for that as well. So that's the one I added. And then this pen, I've forgotten the Penmaker. If you go back and look at the video down below, I tell you what the Penmaker is, but I'm just blanking right now. But this has one of my all-time favorite nibs on it, which is a Micro Architect from the Nib Grinder. It's on a Franklin-Christoph nib, but that's just what he had in stock, and I chose that. But I love the Micro Architect because I'm starting to like more fine nibs, but I also want them to have some sort of variation. This one is great. And again, I can't remember what ink is in here either. That will be in the video down below. But this pen, and it has not dried out, and it has gone for longer periods of time without being written with. So I do think that this cap seals pretty well. I love the design. So this one has been fantastic. This one is always fantastic. This is a Sailor 1911 large. So, I mean, large with Sailor is not super large, but I don't like the regular because it's too small for me. So this one was a fantastic Amazon find. I got it for super cheap. I'm not sure how that happened. It's a genuine Sailor. It's amazing. It has a medium nib. I love, love, love this pen. and it writes beautifully every time, never dries out. Some of my smaller sailors do dry out sometimes. So I'm very happy to report that this one does not dry out. Lovely to write with. And then finally, this was sort of a the sleeper hit of the of the pens that I put in my everyday carry. This is a Bennu. Oh, I've forgotten the name of this particular model. Again, it'll be in the video down below. But I actually put this in my Christmas everyday carry because of the red and green. I don't think it's necessarily shouts Christmas because of those colors, but it does work well with those. And I have a fine nib in here, which is actually, which one did I put in here? This is a Schmidt nib, which does come with the pen. I think I bought this originally with an extra fine, and I just swapped it out for a fine because they're pretty easy to swap out if you have the same size. You just, I think this is one that you can unscrew. If not, it's been so long since I changed it out, so I can't remember. But this is a lovely, lovely fine nib. I love the Schmidt nibs. They're very bouncy for steel nibs, and they just write beautifully. And this is the one that had ume in it by Sailor, so I should not have been disparaging ume in the other pen, because this one has written beautifully. It does dry eventually, and actually pretty fast, and doesn't smudge, and it makes a great pairing for this pen. So yeah, sleeper hit. It's actually way more comfortable to write with for longer sessions than I had anticipated, because before I put it in this, I'd only written with it for shorter writing sessions. It's really light, yet it has sort of a chunkier grip. I mean, the grip is not super tiny. It's smaller than some of the others, but it's still comfortable for me. And I have smaller hands, and this is really super comfortable. It cannot be posted. All right, well, that's sort of the report on all of those pens. So what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm probably going to remove these. So I'm probably just going to clean these two out and put them back in my pen case. This one I'll probably leave the ink in, but put it back in its pen case and pull it out, you know, when I want this beautiful broad nib that writes wonderfully. This one I may put it back in rotation after changing the ink. And this one I'm just going to put away for a while, I think, and think about it. The others are going to remain in rotation until they run out of ink, and then maybe I'll swap them out. We'll see how attached I am to them at that point in time. But once I pick some more fountain pens to be in rotation, I will do a follow-up video and let you know what I selected for my next round. This has actually been a really nice way to get to know my fountain pens and the quirks of my fountain pens. So I'm looking forward to doing this with some others, because I do have quite a few nice nibs in my collection, and I do want to, and pens. I do want to, nibs for me is clearly the focus. But yeah, it's been really nice to try them out and really get to know them, because for a while I just was pretty much in collection mode, just buying more and more pens. And I have not purchased a pen in months at this point, which is amazing. I've almost purchased a pen several times. I put it in my cart, thought about it, and then was like, do I really need this pen? Is this like something else I have in my collection already? Is it just the look of it, but not super special? So things like that. And that's part of the reason why you aren't seeing as much fountain pen content on my channel, because I've cut way back on my purchases. I'm really trying to focus on things that are unique and interesting. One thing I would really love to try is the new Shown Design Monarch nib. It's just so pricey, and it only comes with a pen, and I don't feel like I need another pen. I really, really wish I could just buy the nib by itself, because I would assume it'd be like probably $100 less than the current price, and I would probably just pay that for the nib and put it on one of my other wonderful pens, because the default pen also is just a plain black pen, which I love a plain black pen, don't get me wrong, but I have enough of those in my collection now, and it's not the plain black pen is not different enough for me to want to get it for the pen. You can sub out a different pen for the black pen, but then that adds more price if you're getting something else that's kind of cool. He has great pens, and I have a few of his designs. In fact, I might put some or one at the very least into rotation this next time around, because I do want to get to know them a little bit better too. But I do think that this will also give me better knowledge to do some more thorough reviews of certain designs and certain brands in the future. So I definitely think that in the future I am going to be doing an in-depth look at Pilot, because they've been a star, like the higher end Pilot pens. The lower end Pilot pens are actually great too, but the higher end ones have been nothing but a joy to me. I would love to get one of their super high end pens, but that's just a little out of my price range at this point. And do a more thorough review of the Esterbrook's. I'm actually, so Esterbrook is kind of interesting. I'm so surprised that I love it as much as I do, because when you think about it, it's kind of a generic pen. It's like nothing super special about the SD, other than maybe their cool colors that they issue, but it really is very comfortable for me. So the comfort and this vintage nib is really what I've been focusing on. I think I will also put a different Esterbrook in rotation. So Shown Design, another Esterbrook, so that I can see, is it really just that vintage nib that's pushing it over the edge of being fantastic, or is it also the pen design? Although I do have wonderful nibs on the other pens as well. So, all right, well, that's all I had for you today. Feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. I hope to see you next time, and I'm really happy that my camera recorded all the way through to the end. But in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.